The groom laughed as she stepped off the train. Then a cowboy saw her cry and offered forever. The train hissed as it slowed to a halt on Platform 7 of New Terra City's sprawling spaceport. Its silver body gleamed under the artificial sunlight that flooded the station. Travelers of every kind, humans, aliens, and hybrids, buzzed around, wheeling luggage, greeting loved ones, or whispering hurriedly into translation devices. The air smelled faintly of engine oil, ozone, and the sweet scent of imported fruits from the outer colonies. Ilara Voss stood at the edge of the platform, her small suitcase by her side. She adjusted the strap of her satchel, feeling the weight of both her belongings and the work she carried in her mind. This was her first official mission as a xenobiologist for the United Earth Coalition, and nerves knotted in her stomach. She wasn't sure whether she was excited, scared, or a mix of both. At that moment, a sharp, cheerful laugh broke through the hum of the station. Ilara looked up and saw Garrick, her fiancé. He was an alien of the Lurian species, tall and slender, with shimmering blue skin that reflected the station lights. His eyes glowed faintly amber, a natural trait of his kind. He waved at her, his laugh echoing in the vast terminal. "Ilara, you always take so long to step off a train," he called, amusement clear in his voice. She forced a smile and stepped forward, trying to match his humor. "I'm not falling today, Garrick," she said. But the moment her foot hit the platform, her suitcase caught on a small lip in the metal flooring and she stumbled. Garrick's laughter rang out, not cruel but teasing. He reached out, steadying her with one elegant arm. "See, you always make it exciting," he said, his amber eyes twinkling. Ilara blinked and laughed softly, brushing her hair from her face. "Exciting, yes, but maybe not in a graceful way." Nearby, Jace Taro, a rugged human cowboy, leaned casually against the railings of Platform 7. His hat shaded his eyes, but he saw everything. He had been watching the crowd for hours, waiting for the cargo shipment he was contracted to oversee. Most of the travelers were ordinary colonists or government officials, but Ilara's presence struck him. There was something in the way she held herself, even in that small stumble, that made her stand out, a mixture of strength and vulnerability that he recognized immediately. He noticed the laugh, the stumble, and the gentle touch of Garrick. But then something caught his attention, a flash of something deeper behind her smile. When she thought no one was looking, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hide it. Jace's brow furrowed. Humans were strange, even to themselves sometimes. But he knew this look. It was the mark of someone carrying a burden no one else could see. The crowd surged around them. Hollow signs flickered with advertisements for planetary tour. Robotic vendors wheeled carts of glowing food, and announcements rang out for departing and arriving interstellar trains. Ilara, despite the chaos, felt a sense of being watched. She turned slightly, scanning the crowd, and met Jace's eyes for a brief moment. He tipped his hat ever so slightly, a gesture of understanding, and then turned his attention back to the station. Garrick noticed nothing. He was too busy adjusting his ceremonial robes, his laughter echoing at the antics of other passengers. "Come on, Ilara, let's get your things and head to the reception," he said, motioning toward the exit. Ilara nodded, picking up her suitcase with a practiced lift. She followed him through the crowd, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Around them, humans and aliens moved in a delicate dance of culture, languages, and gestures. Ilara had always loved cities like this, places where the universe's diversity was on full display. But today, something felt off. Her heart ached with a feeling she couldn't quite name. As they walked, Garrick spoke rapidly, introducing her to colleagues, shaking hands with officials, and cracking jokes in his melodic alien tongue. Ilara smiled politely, nodded, and answered questions when needed, but her thoughts wandered. She thought of her work, the research she had risked everything to complete, the experiments that could heal planets, and the danger that might follow if the wrong people found out. Jace, moving quietly through the station, kept a careful distance, observing. He saw the way her shoulders tensed when Garrick laughed too loudly, the way she glanced over her shoulder as if searching for something or someone. He didn't approach yet. Cowboys had patience, and Jace had learned that patience was often more effective than force. The group arrived at the port's central exit, where automated vehicles waited to carry them to their accommodations. Garrick motioned for one of the hovering cars. "Hop in, Elara. I promise no more stumbles," he said, his grin wide and confident. Elara allowed herself a small laugh, climbing into the car beside him. But the moment her back touched the seat, the weight of her hidden anxiety returned. She stared out at the sprawling city, towers of steel and glass, skybridges connecting neighborhoods, and ships of all shapes gliding between the buildings. Despite the grandeur, she felt small, a single human among countless alien faces, carrying a responsibility she wasn't sure she could handle. The car lifted smoothly off the ground, hovering above the city streets. Below, humans rushed along skywalks, their faces intent on errands, jobs, and meetings. Above, ships zipped through lanes marked by glowing signs and floating beacons. Elara thought of her home colony on the distant frontier world of Arcadia. It had been quiet, simple, and safe, a place where people still knew one another by name. She missed it even as she pursued her ambitions. Garrick reached out and touched her hand. "You're quiet," he said softly, his voice dropping from his usual cheerful tone. "Is something wrong?" Elara hesitated. Should she tell him? Could he even understand? She shook her head lightly. "I'm just thinking," she said. Her voice was calm, but her heart pounded. Garrick studied her for a moment, then smiled reassuringly. "Well, thinking is fine. Just don't forget to enjoy the city. And don't cry if I catch you sneaking tears. I'll tease you for a century." Elara smiled, though faintly. She looked away from him and caught a glimpse of Jace again. He was standing across the street now, leaning casually against a column, watching her. Unlike Garrick, he didn't laugh or speak. His presence was calm, solid, human, and for some reason it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. The hovercar reached its destination, a gleaming hotel perched on the edge of the city's central square. Garrick helped her out, laughing at the way she balanced her suitcase and satchel. Elara forced a small laugh but didn't meet his eyes. Instead, she looked around, scanning the busy square, and there he was again, Jace, leaning on a rail, tipping his hat in a quiet acknowledgement. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why, but she felt an unexplainable trust in him. Humans were resilient, Jace seemed to say without words, and they could face challenges that aliens, no matter how advanced, could not always understand. The hotel lobby was buzzing with officials, travelers, and staff. Garrick led her to the reception area, chatting and laughing, while Elara felt a tug in her chest, a pull toward something beyond the immediate chaos, toward the unknown, toward the human courage she sensed in Jace. And just like that, the city, the train, and the crowd faded slightly from her mind. Something new had arrived in her life, a quiet, steady presence that didn't demand her attention but simply existed, reminding her that not all strength needed to be loud. Elara wiped a small tear that had escaped her control. No one noticed. She smiled faintly to herself and thought, maybe, just maybe, I won't have to face everything alone. Jace watched from afar, the corners of his mouth twitching into a small smile. He didn't approach yet because the right moment was coming. And when it did, she would have a choice, not forced, not demanded, but offered freely. And sometimes, he thought, that choice made all the difference in the universe. The hotel room was bright and modern, with large windows overlooking New Terra City. Sunlight bounced off the glass towers, and the hovering vehicles moving like tiny fireflies between the buildings. Elara Voss stood by the window, suitcase open on the bed, but her hands hovered over her belongings, almost afraid to unpack. Garrick was busy setting up for the evening's reception, speaking on his calm device and laughing at something only he seemed to hear. The Lurian's voice carried through the room like music, but it made Alara's chest tighten. She forced a smile and moved quietly to the corner, letting the sound of his laughter fade into background noise. She felt exposed, a single human in a room with an alien she barely felt connected to. Her fingers traced the edge of her satchel and then, despite her best efforts, a small tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, hoping Garrick didn't notice. Humans were not supposed to cry in front of others, especially not in front of someone like him, someone confident, powerful, and seemingly perfect. But Alara couldn't stop the feelings that bubbled inside her. The excitement of the city, the pressure of her work, the weight of responsibility, and the subtle unease she felt around Garrick, it all combined into a quiet ache she could not ignore. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe evenly. Across the city, standing on a nearby sky bridge, Jace Terra watched. From the moment Alara had stepped off the train, he had sensed a tension in her, a struggle she tried to hide from the world. And now, seeing her alone in that room, just for a moment, he could almost feel it himself. He wasn't an alien diplomat, nor a researcher with high expectations. He was just a human, with hands calloused from work, eyes trained to notice details others overlooked, and a heart that recognized another human in need. Humans were strange, he thought, but wonderfully capable of endurance. They carried their burdens quietly and often hid their fears behind smiles. Jace knew that kind of strength. It was the kind that could survive on frontier worlds, against storms, against bandits, against machines that didn't understand mercy. He waited. He knew she needed to feel safe before anyone approached her. Patience, he reminded himself. That was the first rule of helping someone like Alara. Inside the room, Alara sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes scanning the bustling city below. Hovercars zipped past, casting shadows that danced across the streets, and holographic signs flickered with advertisements for everything from interplanetary tour to exotic food from far-off colonies. The city seemed alive, yet she felt distant from it all. She was surrounded by movement and energy, but inside, she was quietly collapsing under invisible weight. Her mind drifted back to the research she carried, experimental terraforming technology that could help revive dying planets. It was her life's work, the culmination of years of study, observation, and long nights in the lab. Yet here she was, far from her lab, far from the safety of her home colony, and entirely at the mercy of others' ambitions. Garrick's government wanted to use her research for purposes she could not condone, and she knew that if she failed, the consequences could ripple across worlds. A knock at the door startled her. "Ilara, are you ready?" "The reception starts soon," Garrick's voice called cheerfully from the hallway. Ilara swallowed and nodded, though he could not see her face. "Yes, yes, I'm ready," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. Garrick's laugh rang out again. "Don't worry. You'll charm everyone just like always." Charm. The word felt hollow. She didn't feel charming. She didn't feel ready. She felt small and fragile, a human among beings far stronger and far more capable in ways she could not match. And yet, somewhere deep inside, she knew she had courage too. It was quiet, subtle, and often overlooked, but it was there. Jace, from his position across the city, felt the faint pull of human energy, the same energy that had drawn him to the frontier countless times. He had seen humans face storms that tore cities apart, negotiate with aliens who spoke in tones humans could barely comprehend, and solve problems with nothing but intuition and a stubborn will. And now, watching Alara, he sensed that same resilience, hidden beneath her tears. He moved closer, not rushing, but gliding along the skyways with the confidence of someone who had navigated dangerous territories before. His approach was careful. He would not intrude, not yet. But when she needed someone, he would be there, steady and unwavering. Back in the hotel room, Alara dressed for the reception, selecting a simple yet elegant outfit that reflected her personality without drawing unnecessary attention. She smoothed her hair, applied light makeup, and practiced a smile she hoped would seem natural. But every glance in the mirror reminded her of her fears, the potential misuse of her research, the growing distance between her and Garrick, and the strange pull she had felt earlier from someone she barely knew, a human cowboy in the crowd. The thought made her pause. She shook her head. Focus, Alara, she told herself. You are here to fulfill your mission, nothing else matters. At the reception hall, lights glimmered like stars against the polished metal walls. Guests from across the galaxy mingled, sharing stories, greetings, and cautious glances. Garrick moved confidently among them, laughing and charming, while Alara followed behind, her smile polite but her mind elsewhere. She caught sight of Jace for a brief second, standing near the entrance as if he had always belonged there. He didn't approach yet, but the calm in his presence made her pause. Her chest tightened in a confusing way, curiosity, caution, and something else she could not name. He gave her the tiniest nod, acknowledging her existence without demanding attention, and for a brief moment she felt less alone. Garrick intercepted a group of diplomats, leaving Alara standing alone near a display of holographic planetary maps. She ran a hand along the smooth surface, tracing the shapes of planets she had studied, worlds she had dreamed of saving. Her mind raced with possibilities, plans, and fears. And then a small, unexpected sound caught her attention, a soft whistle of wind from the ventilation system. Or perhaps it was the sound of her own heart beating faster. Jace had moved closer, slipping through the crowd with quiet steps. He didn't make a scene, didn't announce himself, but simply appeared beside the display, observing her. "You shouldn't be standing here alone," he said gently, his voice low, steady, human. Alara jumped slightly, not expecting anyone to speak. She looked up and saw him, tall, rugged, confident in a way that did not demand attention but offered it. I'm fine," she said quickly, brushing imaginary dust from her outfit. "You don't look fine," Jace replied calmly. His eyes were keen, observing, but not intrusive. Humans have a way of hiding things, but it always shows in small ways. The way your hands shake, the way your eyes wander, it's hard to hide real feelings. Alara stared at him, unsure how to respond. Most strangers would never notice. Most aliens certainly wouldn't, but he did. He saw her not as a diplomat, not as a scientist, not as someone to be managed or controlled, but as a human being with fears, hopes, and courage. I'm just nervous," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "This reception, the city, everything feels overwhelming," Jace nodded. "I understand, the world can be overwhelming, but sometimes it helps to have someone steady nearby, someone who won't judge or demand anything, just presence." Her heart beat faster, but she felt a strange comfort. There was no expectation in his words, no pressure, just understanding. She realized she hadn't felt that in a long time, not in a city full of people, not even with Garrick by her side. Garrick's laughter echoed from across the room, reminding her of the world she had stepped into. She felt torn, pulled between duty and instinct, between protocol and the quiet human courage that Jace represented. "Who are you?" she asked finally, her curiosity breaking through her caution. "Someone who notices," Jace replied with a faint smile, "and someone who believes humans are capable of extraordinary things, even when they doubt themselves." Alara blinked, her mind racing. She had always believed in human potential, in the ingenuity and resilience of her species. But hearing it from another human, someone who lived on the edge of worlds and faced dangers with nothing but courage, felt different. It was grounding, real, and for the first time that day, hopeful. The reception continued around them, diplomats exchanging information, alliances forming quietly in corners. But for a moment, Alara felt a stillness, a pause from the chaos. And in that stillness, She felt something she hadn't expected, a connection. Not romantic, not forced, but a recognition of shared human strength and the possibility of support in a world that often felt too large and too alien. When Garrick finally approached her, unaware of the exchange, Alara smiled politely and followed him back into the flow of the reception. But inside, a seed had been planted, an awareness of courage, understanding, and the subtle power of human presence. Jace watched from the shadows as she moved with Garrick, not interfering, not revealing himself fully but present. He understood that sometimes influence was quiet. Sometimes the right moment came later, and when it did, the choice would be hers to make. And somewhere deep inside, Alara sensed it too, that she was not as alone as she had believed. The next morning, New Terra City shimmered under a pale orange sky. Sunlight reflected off the metal towers, giving the city a surreal glow. Hovercars zipped through the skyways, leaving streaks of light behind them. From her hotel room window, Alara could see the endless flow of activity below, a river of movement and noise. Alara sighed and ran a hand over her face. Sleep had been restless. Memories of the previous night, her hidden tears, Jace's quiet presence, Garrick's laughter, played in her mind like fragments of a dream she couldn't fully understand. She knew she had a mission to complete, yet a growing unease tugged at her. Her research, the terraforming technology she had spent years developing, was meant to heal dying planets. But now, in the hands of Garrick's government, it could be weaponized. Alara's stomach tightened at the thought. She had to find a way to protect her work, but she could not act recklessly. Every step had to be calculated. Down in the hotel lobby, Jace waited quietly. He had learned where she was staying the previous evening when she had stepped off the train. Observing from a distance, he had realized her intelligence and bravery were matched by vulnerability, a combination that could either save worlds or destroy them if misused. When Alara descended the elevator, she spotted him immediately. He gave her a small nod, not intrusive, just acknowledgement. She hesitated but then walked toward the outdoor garden terrace where he stood under the shade of a metallic tree. "You're here early," she said softly, approaching him. "I don't sleep much," he replied simply. "Besides, I like to see the city wake up, gives me time to think and watch." Alara raised an eyebrow. "Watch? Humans," he said, "carry more than they show. You're one of them, I've noticed." She looked away, feeling her cheeks warm. "I'm not sure what you mean." He shrugged lightly, leaning against the railing. "You hid your tears yesterday, but they were there. Most humans try to cover fear, sadness, or doubt. You don't always succeed. That's why I noticed." For a moment, Alara was silent. No alien had ever spoken to her like this. Not Garrick, not any of the officials she had met in her career. Jace's words were simple, human, and strangely comforting. I'm worried," she admitted finally. "About the research, about Garrick. About what might happen if things go wrong." He nodded slowly. "You're right to worry, but worrying won't protect your work. Acting carefully will. Sometimes human intuition makes a difference where rules and technology fail." Alara studied him. He was rugged, with suntanned skin and eyes that seemed to see more than the obvious. She sensed honesty, courage, and experience in his posture. Somehow, she felt that if anyone could help her navigate the coming dangers, it would be him. Before she could respond, a holographic alert popped up from her wrist device. The message was brief, urgent. "Security breach detected near research transport. Immediate response required." Her heart skipped a beat. She grabbed her satchel, checking the secure container that held her terraforming modules. Everything was intact, but the alert made it clear that danger was closer than she thought. Jace's eyes narrowed. "Sounds like your work is already a target," he said. "If Garrick's government wants to weaponize it, others might try to steal it before you even act." Alara nodded, her mind racing. "I can't trust them. I have to find a safe way to secure the modules, but I can't leave the city. It would draw too much attention." Jace smiled faintly. "Good, that's human thinking. Plan carefully, act decisively. Sometimes the smallest ideas make the biggest difference. They moved quickly to the transport hub where her research modules were being held. The area was heavily guarded, with Lurian security personnel monitoring every corridor. Garrick himself oversaw operations, his blue skin gleaming in the morning light, his amber eyes alert. Alara approached him, trying to mask her concern. "Garrick, may I inspect the containment area?" she asked politely. Garrick looked at her, a playful smile on his face. "Of course, my dear, but don't worry, everything is perfectly secure. We wouldn't dream of mishandling such important technology." Alara's stomach tightened. She didn't doubt their abilities. They were advanced, disciplined, and powerful. But she knew one truth about humans. Ingenuity often outweighed raw strength. And if she had to, she would rely on that human ingenuity to protect her work. Jace moved silently beside her, scanning the surroundings. Unlike the aliens, he trusted instincts and observation over protocols and formalities. He spotted small inconsistencies, security cameras with blind spots, a guard distracted by a holoscreen, an access panel that looked tampered with. "Ilara," he whispered, "someone might try to get in. You need a plan before it's too late." She swallowed hard. "I thought I could trust the guards. I thought I could trust Garrick." "Trust," Jay said softly, "is not given, it's earned. And right now you need to protect yourself first." Ilara nodded, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Together they devised a quick plan. She would create a temporary diversion using a holographic projection of the transport modules. It would make it appear that the modules were still in place, while she and Jace moved the real containers to a secure, hidden location. The plan required precision. They timed their movements with the shifts of the guards, the rotation of the camera drones, and the light patterns of the hallway sensors. Every step was calculated, every pause measured. As they moved through the corridors, Jace whispered guidance, his voice calm but firm. "Left here, pause there. Don't look at the cameras. Humans are unpredictable but predictable enough if you pay attention." Ilara followed his instructions, heart racing. It was risky, but she trusted him. Every step she took reminded her of human courage, the ability to improvise, to act decisively, and to face danger with calm determination. They reached the temporary storage room. Ilara opened the secure container, confirming the modules were intact. Relief washed over her, but it was brief. She knew the danger wasn't gone, it had only shifted. "Time to move them," Jace said. "Follow my lead. No mistakes." Together, they transported the modules through a network of maintenance tunnels, hidden from security systems. The tunnels were narrow, lit by faint, flickering lights. Every sound, the hum of ventilation, the echo of their footsteps, was amplified in the quiet. Ilara felt a thrill she had never experienced before. Fear, yes, but also exhilaration. She realized that humans were capable of facing danger without surrendering to it. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was action in spite of it. Jace glanced at her. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "Keep going, almost there." Finally, they reached a secluded observation deck overlooking the city. The modules were secure. Ilara allowed herself a moment to breathe, leaning against the railing. Below, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the near disaster averted above. Jace looked at her. "You see. You didn't just survive this, you made it work. That's human ingenuity, planning, adapting, improvising." Ilara nodded, a mix of relief and awe on her face. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. He smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe you just needed a little help seeing your own strength." She looked at him, realizing that human courage was not just about boldness or physical action. It was the ability to act with clarity, to protect what mattered, and to trust instincts even when logic seemed insufficient. She had doubted herself, yet here she was, alive, successful, and more aware of her own power than ever. The sun was higher in the sky now, casting long shadows across the city. Ilara knew the challenge was not over. Garrick would notice the modules were missing eventually, and the political stakes of her research were higher than she could fully imagine. But she also knew one thing. She could rely on human ingenuity and courage to face the next obstacle, whatever it might be. Jace rested his hand lightly on the railing beside her. "The universe doesn't care about fear," he said simply. "It only responds to action. Humans were built for that. We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we even thrive." Alara smiled softly. "I think I'm beginning to understand." "You will," he said, "and when the time comes, you'll make choices that matter. Not because someone tells you to, not because rules demand it, but because you decide, and humans are very good at that." The modules were safe, the immediate danger avoided, but Alara knew this was only the beginning. Garrick's ambitions, the city's political machinations, and the vast possibilities of her research still loomed ahead. But for the first time, she felt confident. She wasn't alone. And she had something invaluable: human ingenuity, courage, and a quiet strength that no alien protocol could ever replace. Jace gave her one last nod before heading back into the tunnels. "Stay alert," he said. "The next challenge will come sooner than you expect." Alara watched him disappear, feeling a strange mix of gratitude, admiration, and an unspoken trust. Humans had survived against impossible odds for centuries, navigating worlds, stars, and civilizations with nothing but wit, courage, and determination. And she was one of them. For the first time that day, she smiled, not a polite, careful smile for others, but a real human smile. She knew the universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. But she also knew humans, herself included, were capable of extraordinary things. And as she gazed out at the city, the thought lingered in her mind. Whatever came next, she would face it as a human, clever, brave, and unstoppable. Night fell over New Terra City, casting a violet glow across the skyscrapers and reflecting off the hovering vehicles that crisscrossed the sky. The city never truly slept. Lights flickered in offices, shops, and laboratories, and the hum of energy systems created a constant pulse beneath the urban chaos. Yet in one quiet corner, high above the streets, Alara Voss prepared for the most dangerous task of her life. Her mind raced with calculations. She had secured her research modules with Jace earlier in the day, but the alert she had received had been no accident. Someone, or many, wanted to steal her work, and Garrick's influence extended far beyond the hotel and the transport hub. If her technology fell into the wrong hands, countless worlds could be affected. Alara checked her equipment carefully: a portable containment unit, energy shields to protect the modules, and a compact comm device tuned to a private channel with Jace. She knew he would arrive when the time was right. Until then, she would act alone. A sudden vibration on her wrist device signaled a security breach closer than she anticipated. Her breath caught, and her heart hammered against her ribs. She adjusted the energy shields around the container and scanned the room. Shadows flickered against the walls, and faint movement hinted at intruders. Her training as a xenobiologist had taught her observation, attention to detail, and patience. But this was different. This was danger in its purest form, a threat not from wild creatures, but from beings capable of advanced tactics, stealth, and technology. Then, in the darkness of the hallway, she saw them: a group of figures clad in dark suits, moving with precision and silence. Garrick's security, or worse, mercenaries hired by rival factions. Their intent was clear: they wanted the modules. Alara's mind worked quickly. She could run, but the city was too exposed. She could fight, but the odds were against her. There was only one option: outsmart them, using the one thing no advanced alien or mercenary technology could predict: human ingenuity. She activated the holographic decoy she had prepared earlier, projecting a false image of the modules on the opposite side of the room. Lights flickered, creating an illusion of energy spikes and movement. The intruders paused, adjusting their scanners to focus on the decoy. Ilara moved silently toward the service elevator, pressing the emergency override to reach the rooftop. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her mind was clear. She thought of the frontier world she had studied, the humans who survived harsh environments with nothing but creativity, courage, and adaptability. If they could survive storms, alien wildlife, and political chaos, she could survive this. A metallic clatter echoed behind her. One of the intruders had noticed the decoy was false. Ilara's pulse quickened. She sprinted down the narrow corridor, hugging the walls, using shadows to remain unseen. Her footsteps were quiet, practiced, and deliberate. Suddenly, a voice crackled in her comm device. "Ilara, head to the maintenance hatch on the west side. I've got the exit covered." It was Jace, calm, precise, and reliable. Relief surged through her. She adjusted her path, running toward the hatch with all her strength. The intruders split, some chasing her directly, others circling back to investigate the decoy. Their movements were coordinated, but human unpredictability gave her a crucial advantage. She ducked behind machinery, slipped through narrow vents, and used the city's infrastructure as her ally. Every twist and turn was a calculated risk, and her human instinct guided her where rules and logic might fail. Reaching the maintenance hatch, she found Jace waiting. He leaned casually against the hatch door, his hat tilted, eyes scanning the perimeter. "About time," he said quietly. "I thought I'd have to leave a note." Ilara climbed up beside him, panting but focused. "They're faster than I expected," she admitted. Jace nodded. "Yes, but they can't think like humans. They can't predict improvisation, adaptation, and courage. Those are our strengths." Together they emerged onto the rooftop, the modules secured between them. Below, the intruders paused, realizing they had been outsmarted for now. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. She felt the familiar surge of human ingenuity, using brains over brute force, observation over assumption, and courage over fear. But their escape was far from guaranteed. The city's skyways were monitored, and they had to move fast. Jace led her to a hidden hoverbike, one of the few unmarked vehicles capable of rapid flight across the city. He handed her a helmet. "Strap in. Hold tight. Humans can adapt, but physics doesn't negotiate." Ilara obeyed, securing the modules behind the hoverbike and climbing on behind him. As Jace engaged the thrusters, they lifted off the rooftop, weaving between buildings with precise, fluid motion. The wind whipped against their helmets, but Ilara felt exhilarated. Fear was still present, but it sharpened her senses rather than paralyzing her. Below them, the intruders pursued in sleek hovercrafts, firing energy nets and scanners to locate the modules. Jace maneuvered effortlessly, banking sharply around towers, diving into narrow alleyways, and using the city's architecture to their advantage. Ilara held on tightly, her mind racing with calculations, instincts, and quick adjustments. Every human skill she had ever learned was in use: balance, timing, observation, and intuition. "Keep your focus," Jace said over the comm. "Your mind is sharper than theirs. Anticipate their moves and we'll stay ahead." Ilara nodded, feeling a growing confidence. They were a team, her knowledge and his experience complementing each other. For the first time, she realized how powerful humans could be when they combined intellect, courage, and instinct. The chase led them to the edge of the city, where skyscrapers gave way to open air and gravity-defying walkways. The intruders were close, but Jace had one final trick. He steered the hoverbike toward a narrow maintenance tunnel hidden along the side of a tower. The pursuers followed, unaware of the trap ahead. Inside the tunnel, Jace cut power to the lights, plunging the path into darkness. He engaged the hoverbike's stealth mode, making it nearly invisible to scanners. The intruders skidded to a halt outside, struggling to find their target. Ilara could hear their frustrated communications, but she remained calm. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and now that principle applied in full measure. Finally, they emerged at a safe location, an abandoned observation deck high above the city, far from security patrols. Alara set the modules down carefully, checking each one. Everything was intact. Relief washed over her, but she knew this was only temporary. Garrick would notice soon and the stakes would rise again. Jace watched her, expression steady. "You did well," he said. "Better than I expected." Alara looked at him, a mixture of exhaustion and awe on her face. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. He shrugged lightly. "Maybe. Or maybe you just needed to see what humans are capable of. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite it. And you acted." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the city below. Lights flickered like stars, vehicles streaked across the skyways, and distant sounds of the city carried up to them. Alara realized that she was learning something invaluable, not just about survival but about the nature of human strength, adaptability, quick thinking, and unyielding courage in the face of impossible odds. "You realize," she said softly, "this is only the beginning." "If they want my research, they won't stop," Jace nodded. "I know, but humans have a way of rising to the challenge. We improvise, we adapt, and we survive, you'll see. And you'll do more than survive, you'll thrive." Alara smiled faintly, a mixture of determination and exhaustion. She had faced her first real threat and had come out alive, using nothing but her mind, her instincts, and her human courage. The modules were safe for now, and she had a partner she could trust, someone who understood that human ingenuity was sometimes the greatest weapon of all. As they prepared to leave the observation deck, Alara felt a surge of resolve. She would protect her research, not with the tools of aliens or brute force, but with her human abilities, intelligence, courage, and quick thinking. And when the next challenge arrived, and it would arrive, she would be ready. Jace glanced at her one last time before leading the way down the stairwell. "Remember," he said quietly, "humans have always survived, not because it was easy but because we can do what no one else can. Adapt, think, act, and when it matters we rise." Alara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but this time it felt lighter. She wasn't alone and she wasn't powerless. She was human, clever, brave, and ready for whatever came next. And as the city lights flickered below, she realized that the heroic choice wasn't about following rules, or relying on others, or waiting for someone else to act. The heroic choice was hers, and she was prepared to make it. Dawn broke over New Terra City, painting the sky with streaks of orange and violet. The city shimmered like a jewel, towers reflecting the first light of day, hovercars tracing trails across the skyways, and the distant hum of machinery blending with the morning air. But for Alara Voss, dawn felt different this time. It wasn't just the beginning of a new day, it was the start of a new chapter. She stood atop the observation deck where she and Jace had secured the research modules the previous night. The city below looked peaceful, oblivious to the chaos that had unfolded only hours before. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe freely, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in months. Jace appeared silently behind her, his presence steady and reassuring. "Morning," he said with a small smile. Alara turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the sky above. "Morning," she replied softly. She was tired, physically and emotionally, but also filled with a quiet determination. Last night had tested her limits, but she had survived, and she had learned something vital. Humans were capable of extraordinary things. "You did well," Jace said, his voice calm but full of genuine admiration. "Not just with the modules, but with everything. You planned, adapted, and acted with courage. That's what humans do. That's why we endure, even when everything seems impossible." Alara smiled faintly. "I couldn't have done it without you. I don't know what I would have done alone." Jace shook his head. "Maybe. Or maybe you just needed to see your own strength. That's what humans often need, reminders of what we can do when we refuse to give up." The words resonated in her mind. Human strength wasn't just physical. It wasn't measured by wealth, status, or technology. It was measured by courage, ingenuity, and the ability to act in the face of fear. And she had proven that she possessed all three. Below them, the city slowly came to life. The guards and security personnel from the transport hub were already investigating the previous night's intrusion, but Alara knew that the modules were safe, hidden in a secure location only she and Jace knew. She felt a sense of relief but also a quiet responsibility. Her work was safe, but the mission wasn't complete. She had to ensure it remained that way. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice steady. Jace leaned against the railing, looking out at the city. "First, we make sure the research stays protected. Then, we let the world see what humans can do. You're not just a scientist. You're proof that human ingenuity and courage can make a difference, even in a galaxy full of challenges." Alara felt a surge of pride. For years, she had dedicated herself to science, often forgetting the human element, the creativity, adaptability, and bravery that made her species exceptional. Jace's words reminded her that her work wasn't just about technology or experiments. It was about people, about life, and about making choices that mattered. As they prepared to leave the observation deck, a familiar voice called from below. "Ilara, wait!" She turned to see Garrick approaching, flanked by security personnel. His blue skin shimmered in the morning light and his amber eyes held a mix of surprise and concern. "Ilara," he said, slightly out of breath, I don't understand. The modules, they're gone. How did this happen?" Ilara met his gaze, her voice calm and unwavering. "They're safe. I moved them to a secure location. They were never at risk, not from me, not from anyone else. But I couldn't leave their protection to anyone else, you included." Garrick blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to something softer, perhaps respect, perhaps realization. You acted alone." "Yes," she replied. "But I wasn't alone entirely. I had help from someone I could trust, someone who understands human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Humans survive because of these qualities, Garrick, not just technology or rules." For a long moment, Garrick said nothing. Then he nodded slowly, the corners of his mouth lifting in a small, respectful smile. I underestimated you, Ilara. You're not just a scientist, you're extraordinary." Ilara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Garrick's acknowledgement was not her goal, but it affirmed something she already knew. Humans were capable of facing danger and emerging stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever before. Jace stepped forward, tipping his hat slightly. "She didn't do it for praise," he said simply. "She did it because she had to, and that's what humans do. They act when it matters, even if no one is watching." Alara looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." He shrugged, his faint smile steady. "Just doing what humans do best." The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of distant ocean air and the hum of city energy. Alara realized that the world, this galaxy, was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. But she also knew that humans had something unique, the ability to adapt, improvise, and face challenges head-on. She thought of the missions ahead, the research she needed to complete, and the countless planets that could benefit from her work. The stakes were high, but she no longer felt powerless. With courage, ingenuity, and allies she could trust, she could make a real difference. Jace placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "There's something else," he said, his voice quieter now. "You've faced danger, protected what matters, and proven human courage. But there's another choice waiting, one about your future, and that choice is yours alone." Alara looked at him, curiosity and caution mingling. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jace said, "that humans make choices not just for survival but for connection, trust, and companionship. I can't force anything, but I can offer something." He stepped closer, his presence steady and grounding. "I can offer protection, partnership, and something more. If you want it. No pressure, no expectations. just the possibility of a future where you're not alone in facing challenges, where courage, ingenuity, and heart are shared. Alara's mind raced. She thought of Garrick, the alien diplomat who had been part of her life, yet whose ambitions had put her work, and perhaps countless lives, at risk. She thought of Jace, the human who had trusted her, guided her, and understood her in a way no one else had. Her heart, her instincts, and her growing understanding of human strength pointed clearly toward one choice. She took a deep breath, letting the city lights and morning air fill her senses. I choose, she said softly, to trust you, to face the future together. Jace's eyes softened, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. Then we face it as humans, he said, clever, brave, and unyielding. Below, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the quiet decisions being made above. Alara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The modules were secure, the immediate threat was gone, and she had chosen a future that embraced courage, trust, and human connection. They descended from the observation deck, moving through the city with a sense of purpose. Each step felt lighter, more certain. Alara realized that human courage was not just about facing danger. It was about making choices that mattered, about building bonds, and about believing in oneself. As they reached a quieter part of the city, Jace looked at her, tipping his hat in his quiet, cowboy way. "Ready for what comes next?" he asked. Alara smiled, her confidence and determination shining. "Yes, and this time I'm not alone." They walked side by side, the city stretching endlessly before them, full of opportunity, challenge, and life. Alara knew that whatever dangers awaited, she had the courage, ingenuity, and human spirit to face them. And she had someone to share it with, a partner who understood, trusted, and believed in the same qualities that made humans extraordinary. Above, the stars began to fade with the rising sun, but their light lingered in the sky, a reminder that even in the vast universe, human courage, ingenuity, and heart could shine brightly. Alara paused for a moment, looking out at the horizon. She thought of the worlds she could help, the research she had fought to protect, and the choices that had brought her here. And she felt a quiet certainty settle in her heart. She had chosen her path, embraced her courage, and found a future worth protecting. Jace placed a reassuring hand on her back as they moved forward. "Forever isn't just a word," he said quietly. "It's a choice, and today we choose it together." Alara smiled, her eyes bright with hope. "Forever," she repeated softly, letting the word settle between them like a promise. And as the city below awoke to a new day, two humans stood together, ready to face the galaxy with courage, ingenuity, and heart. Together they would protect what mattered, rise to challenges, and embrace the future they had chosen, forever in the stars.